What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Conquering Jericho. Uh, this video is a couple of days later than I anticipated it being, but today I'm going to start talking about my life stepping into adulthood. And so I've titled this video Becoming Presentable, Stepping into Adulthood. In the last video, I shared how, basically transitioning through my teenage years and going off into the military. And so today we're going to continue on that same conversation and what that really means, as we grow into our young adult age, and some of the pressures that we experience, some of the pressures we put upon ourselves to become presentable to the world, and how that can really detract from what's most important because of some of the narratives and the rhetoric and just the kind of the vanity that the world is pressed upon us to strive to achieve and maintain as adults. When I first went in, my goal as I enlisted in the Air Force was to wear the uniform as long as I felt that it fit me, but I was going to give it everything that I had. And so I began that. I went through like 6 months, give or take, of training, from basic training to my security forces tech school. And my first assignment, I went off to South Korea. That was a very interesting timeline or time frame of my life, because for the first time I was truly on my own. I was away from everybody that I'd ever known or loved, or even loved me, and I had to find who I was and be okay with being an individual without this support system around me, or a mom or dad to go cry to, or complain to if things didn't go so well, or whatever. And I remember being, I was 18 years old. I turned 19 maybe 2 months or so after I arrived in country. And I remember there was times where I was just feel alone, at night. And times that I even cried, before going to sleep, or cried myself to sleep, because I felt that loneliness. And that was a really interesting time frame to start to become kind of self-aware, because while I felt empowered in what I was doing, I also felt isolated, and I felt like for the first time everything did kind of fall on my shoulders. As far as financial income and all of that, obviously, being military, you get paid. I mean, that's never an issue. First and the 15th of every month, you're getting a paycheck. And so I just really threw myself into my work. I began to outshine a lot of my peers because my work ethic, thanks in large part to my mom and dad growing up. They had taught me work ethic, and so my work ethic was that of, as we called it in the military, a hard charger. I became certified in just about everything that I could at that point, having only 2 stripes on my sleeve, and began to grow a lot of, or earn a lot of respect from those who were senior to me. But at the same time, that's also when I started to really get into things that were not healthy. And looking back as a fully bought and paid for Christian now, I that's when I really stepped into a life of sin. I began, hanging out, drinking with friends. I met my first wife a couple of weeks after I moved to Korea. She was a Korean national. She was a kindergarten teacher, and she was 10 years older than me. And that was the first time that I had ever really had a steady relationship with a woman. And especially growing up in the small town that I had, like it was just kind of on and off, girlfriends or whatever, but nothing ever really serious. And I didn't expect for this to be serious, but it became serious, and we spent a lot of time together. And we had a car. Nobody else that was an airman first class, a two striper, an E3 had a vehicle in Korea, and so it was a really interesting time. But at the same time, I would drinking and this and that. I remember this one night there was a guy that I was stationed there with, and we'd gone out, we'd done some drinking, and then we decided to do some wrestling back behind the dorms. And there's a saying in the Air Force security forces that if it wasn't for cops, we would need cops. And while we were law enforcement, we were also security. And so we ran security for the base, we ran law enforcement for the base, and but that statement was very true. And that night I ended up, some people in an adjacent dormitory had apparently called in the law enforcement desk or central security control and said that there was some guys out there wrestling or fighting, I think is what they said. And so sure enough, some of the on-duty security forces members showed up and apprehended us, took us in, and I ended up getting an Article 15, which is a non-judicial punishment for underage drinking. See, I was 19 at the time, but the drinking age was 20 years old, and so clearly I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I remember my very first flight chief, who, a flight chief is basically your senior leader. E7 Master Sergeant guy, had been in for 20 years almost at the time, and he said something very profound to me that even still to this day resonates in a lot of ways and is very applicable to a lot of areas of life, and that's only do what you think your stripes can handle. And at that point in time, I was definitely living way beyond what my stripes could handle. And so I ended up getting in trouble, and my reputation, took a pretty significant hit. Now, I'll say that while that humbled me, it also increased this drive to do even better and overcome that kind of stain on my reputation, so to speak. Simultaneously, while all of this is happening in my own life, I had my roommate who became my best friend at the time. He was going through a lot. His high school sweetheart and him were dealing with this long distance relationship that just really put a strain on him, that unless you've lived in that type of a lifestyle and being separated from the person that you love, you just really can't experience it. You can't understand it. And I know that it was painful for him. There was one night where he had talked, he had been drinking, and he was talking about taking his own life and stuff like that. And I remember it just making me so mad, because why would you let something like this drive you to the point of saying things that taking your own life and putting your mouth over the muzzle of a gun and pulling the trigger and things like that. And I remember the next day after he was saying this, he was supposed to be posted at a place where he would have been by himself, and with only somebody coming around every couple of hours or so to check on him. And it really worried me, it really concerned me. But at the time I didn't know how to deal with something like this. And so while I was filled with compassion and empathy for him, not knowing how to deal with it as a young adult, it manifested in anger. And I remember we got into like this fist fight in our dorm room over it. I ended up punching I had this like shadow box thing, clock with some crossed guns and a Korean flag, an American flag, whatever this, that I had bought. It was hanging on the wall, and I remember just punching right through that thing, just out of rage, because I didn't have any control. I couldn't control the situation, and nothing that I was saying was making him back off of this ledge. And I remember it just frustrated me to no end. And as I punched through this thing, this shard of glass, I mean, this thing was about an inch and a half long. It just went straight through my hand. I still have the scar today. And I only laugh because of how stupid it was, not because I'm proud of it or anything like that. But that's a consistent reminder that, you know, today, especially now, that rage and anger, it doesn't solve anything. You know, fists and fighting and all it solves nothing. You know, we live in a world now where there's wars and rumors of wars and mass shootings, and I mean, violence is just so prolific in our society today, and it never accomplishes anything. It truly never accomplishes anything. But throughout all of these things, you know, the goal was to become whoever it was that I was supposed to be, so that I would be presentable to, you know, my girlfriend or, you know, fiance or whatever, that I would be presentable to the people who were superior to me, that I would be presentable to, you know, anyone and everyone. And it's basically pride. You know, obviously being a military member, there's this level of pride that's kind of, you know, instilled in you. Being an American, there's pride that's instilled in you, and it's probably the same with any country. I've never been a citizen of any other country, but I know, you know, people from Germany. I know people from Ukraine. I know people from, you know, France or the Netherlands, and everybody has a sense of pride in where they come from, their culture, their society, their background, you know, the color of their skin. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of who you are, but it's when you get to that level of pride that you lack the humility, that really, you know, bad things can kind of start to happen to you. And I was dealing with kind of both sides of this. As I continued on in my career, in the first several years of that, I accomplished a lot. I really did. I was the youngest Air Force Security Forces member to get hired as an instructor at the Security Forces Academy in San Antonio, Texas, at Lackland Air Force Base, and that was just a tremendous honor. I couldn't have imagined that, you know, when I first went in, that I would be picked on, you know, picked, not picked on. I did that in my childhood, you know, but you know, called upon to come and teach. And that's when I really found, you know, my passion. I really, really enjoyed that, you know, standing in front of a crowd of people of, you know, 100 and on average of about 120 people per class. You know, we had a 17-day track that was, you know, specifically for the section that I was, you know, training in, and that was combat arms training and maintenance, or weapons, basically everything from a 9mm pistol all the way up to, you know, M60 or M240 machine gun, and even some of the heavier ones, 50 cal, Mark 19, et cetera, et cetera. But that also instilled even more pride inside of me. And it was at this time that I really started to kind of spiral out of control as far as, you know, that pride and what fruit was going to be manifest from this. You know, there was a night during that 17-day tract of training that we had to do night fire. And I remember, you know, it was really frustrating to me because my wife at the time, and this is nothing against her, but she would consistently, you know, think that I was cheating on her. And I wasn't. I really wasn't. But what I realize now is that she was seeing something inside of me that I had yet to identify myself. And it reached a point where there was an opportunity to act on that. And I remember literally my decision-making process was, I'm tired of being, you know, blamed for something that I'm not doing, so I might as well do it. And I'm here to tell you now that that right there was a defining moment, a pivotal moment for me, because I opened Pandora's box. And Pandora's box, you know, once you open that, it's really, really hard to close. And so I became an adulterer. I lived that life for many years, actually, consistently trying to lie and cover it up, say that I wasn't doing this or I wasn't doing that. But I caused a lot of pain. I caused a lot of hurt to my wife, my young children. At the time when that started, I had my son, who was a couple of years old, and my daughter was soon to be born, and yeah, that was a real mess. It was a real mess that would ultimately lead to divorce. It would lead to my kids having to be raised by their stepdad. Caused a lot of pain inside of me because I didn't want to be that person. I really didn't. But I was so prideful, and I enjoyed the attention because I thought that I was somebody. I thought that I was somebody, and being somebody now in this new world, in this new life of adulthood, my early 20s, as compared to being consistently picked on as a child, it was a complete stark contrast to each other that it was like this drug. Pride is a drug. You get addicted to it. And even though in the wake of pride, there's so many things that so many destructive patterns that can emerge from that. It's like you can't stop. It's like there's no quit. Especially being in the military, because you're consistently pushed to be better, to be, stronger, faster, everything, better. And I was, professionally, I was better all the time. And, but personally, I was getting worse and getting worse and getting worse. Add to that, financially, I owned my own home, mortgaged. I had nice vehicles, would buy my wife, item after item after item, purses and jewelry and this and that, but really ultimately living beyond my means. And I know a lot of us do that or have done that plenty. I think the average American citizen has, somewhere on average like $40,000 in debt, maybe more now. I don't know. But all of that's pride. It's vanity. It's vain. Like, we're consistently looking for something to fill this hole inside of us, to make ourselves presentable to everybody else, to make ourselves look like somebody, like we matter, like we're important. But we're important simply because we're alive. We're important because of the fact that we were created to be here. And the things that we do with our life, they only matter when the people that are closest to us are enriched by our presence. See, I can't go back now and change any of that. I can't go back to my young children and get that opportunity to raise them again. I can't go back to my first wife and take all that pain away that I caused. I can't go back to my second wife and take away that pain that I caused. My desire is to do that. But all that I can do now is just to thank God that He took all that away from me. All that pride, all of the pain, all of the shame and the guilt that I carried. Because finally, when it came time for me to close that box, and the way that happened, I had basically pushed my second wife, I had pushed her to the point where, there was basically the point of no return. If I didn't do something drastic, it was over. And so, you know, I just broke. I broke and asked God to take that away from me, and He did. This was 2017. So from 2000 and what was it, 2004 to 2017, I was an adulterer. You know, it wasn't like all the time, but enough, 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 enough to cause pain, enough to cause a lot of resentment. I'm sure there was people that were affected outside of who I could even see, you know. But it was in those really early days in my 20s that I was just kind of going off half cocked. Whatever I felt like doing, I'd do. Whether it offended somebody or not, it didn't matter to me. And, you know, and that's the lack of wisdom that we have as young adults. We're just trying to make ourselves presentable. But ultimately, that presentation is just, it's pride, envy, jealousy, because we see other people with things that we don't have. We want those things instead of considering our own life and saying, you know what, just be better yourself tomorrow than you are today. Be better today than you were yesterday. And competing against yourself, we compete against everybody else. We're never good looking enough. We look at other people and think, oh, they're this, or they're big, or they're, handsome, or, for women that, someone else is prettier, someone else has, better body, or nicer things, or, a better house, a better car. And so we're consistently, keeping up with the Joneses, as they used to say, or still say, I guess. But creating that type of a lifestyle for ourselves in our youth, our young adult age, can really set us up for failure as we grow older. We pile on burden after burden after burden, and then we reach this point where it's like, how do you even get out from underneath it? How do you break free? Well, you break free by the power of God. That's what finally broke it all away from me. That's what finally took it all away. All the guilt, all the shame, all the burden of it all. Consistently competing, worrying about, obtaining this or attaining that, or reaching this goal, or reaching that, achieving this vision, or whatever it did. It's all vanity, ultimately. It was only through the power of the Most High God, the creator of heaven and earth, and the sacrifice of his Son, the only begotten of the Father, who came and showed us that true power, true strength and courage isn't about flexing on other people. It's not about flexing what you can do or who you are to others. It's about serving others. It's about loving everybody. It takes a whole lot more courage to love somebody that hates you. It takes a whole lot more courage to be kind. It takes a whole lot more courage to say no to temptation, to do things that we know we shouldn't do, than it does to fall into temptation, to strive against your neighbor, to envy, to be jealous. Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And he's alive today, still, seated in heaven. And there will be a day where he comes back to get his own. And there will be a day where he will come and judge the earth. believe or don't. And we get judged based on our works. What did we do? What did we do during our time on this earth? No matter what we've done in the past, there is forgiveness by grace through faith in the only begotten Son. Whether you call him Jesus Christ, Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yeshua, there's a lot of names, like I've said before, that he goes by. And I'm not here to debate on how you should pronounce his name. That's not what this is about. This is about faith in him. This is about recognizing that some of the things that maybe you're still struggling with, these burdens that you're carrying around because of your adult age. You started on this path that you just don't know how to get off of it. And I don't know how to be anything other than who I am. We all get trapped in this. I am who I am, and nobody can judge me. But God is judging you. He's judging every word you say. He's judging every action you take. But he's also loving and forgiving. So you don't have to stay in these places of sin. They are sin because the end of them creates nothing but chaos and destruction, death, anguish, suffering. And men, we bottle it all up. We don't tell people about it. And a lot of times we definitely don't tell our women, because a lot of times they turn around and use it as weapons against us, or they don't know how to deal with helping us or whatever. But the Father, the Heavenly Father, he'll listen. And he'll give you grace. He'll give you mercy. He is faithful and just and true. And his mercy endures forever. His grace is sufficient. His love is unlike anything you've ever experienced. If you've never experienced it, I'm telling you, from my own personal experience, everything that ever caused me pain, everything that ever caused me anguish or some burden or guilt or shame or anything, he took it all away in an instant. Something I never anticipated was even possible. How is that even possible? It's because we're a spiritual person. We get tripped up by this flesh. We see with our eyes and we feel with our hands. But this is nothing. It's that spiritual man, that inner person, whether man, woman, whatever. And that spirit can be regenerated. It can be restored. It can be made new. You become a new creature, a new creation. And that can only happen through the power of God. And even in that, even in being a new creature spiritually, even your physical body will begin to change and to heal. I'm 43 years old, and I don't know that I've ever been in better shape. I don't say that to boast. I say that because that's all God. He's given me the strength. He's given me endurance. He's taken me through things I could have never walked through on my own. I'm not sick. I don't get sick. I don't have health insurance or anything like that. I don't need it. My health insurance is the Lord. The Bible says that his word is life to those who find it and health to all their flesh. I trust that. I believe that. Everything you want can be found in him. But I'm not talking about wants in this physical world. I'm talking about the wants of your heart, the wants of your soul, the things that you truly, truly long for. But maybe you haven't taken the time to sit and really take inventory and take stock of what it is that you're actually trying to get with working so hard and buying this and buying that and going into debt for this and going into debt for that, constantly trying to fill some void. And maybe you don't even realize that that's what you're doing. I didn't for a long time. He invites us to enter into his rest. And that rest is simply just be. Just be. Ask him to guide you. Ask him to teach you, to give you wisdom, knowledge, understanding, to show you the path to walk in for your own life. He created you for a purpose. He doesn't create out of vain desires. He creates you for a purpose. Don't go through the rest of your life just serving yourself and never arriving at that purpose of understanding that you are a spirit being, that you were created because God loves you. And the only thing that he asks of you is to love him back. And when you love him and he loves you and that relationship is formed, he teaches you how to love your neighbor, how to even love your enemy, how to be open and vulnerable about the things that you used to be so that you can help others see clearly. And so I don't mind getting on here and sharing these things. I was a rageful person. I was a hateful person at times in my life. I was an adulterer. I was a full-blown sinner. Sure, there's plenty of people you could look at, see, we as humans, we measure sin like this, like a bar graph, but in reality, it's not like that. It's not how God sees it. His word says if you break one of the least of these commandments, you're guilty of breaking the whole law. Because if we truly love God, then we'll submit ourselves to him. Just like if we truly love our dad as a little child, we're going to do exactly what makes our dad happy. We're going to learn what makes him happy. We're going to learn what makes him sad, what makes him angry, what makes him, joyous, whatever. And we're going to try to stay on his good side. We're going to try to make him proud of us. That's the whole goal of a child with a father or a mother. So I invite you to give him a try. Whatever you're carrying around, from trying to be presentable to the world, even presentable to yourself, present yourself to God. Present yourself to the Most High Creator of heaven and earth. Yield yourself to him in true humility. And he will make you, he'll make you presentable to yourself where you can look in the mirror and say, I know who I am, and I'm no longer bound by, I no longer have this bondage of hate or burdens of shame or guilt, adultery, addiction, all of these things. He'll take it all away. So I hope today this message has blessed you. More importantly, I hope that you allow the Lord to bless you, to pour his love out into your heart and into your life, and give you peace that passes all understanding, because you really can't understand it unless you've experienced it yourself. I know that much. Being just, a Christian, saying I'm a Christian, that's not it. True surrender, true repentance, true being born again, baptized in the washing of the water of the Word of God. The Word in true form. Word is the divine instruction, divine logic. Word in the New Testament is logos in Greek. Logos is that divine inspiration. It's the thing on the inside of you that's telling you what you should do. Then you got the devil coming over here and all his minions over here telling you, no, you can't do it that way, you can't do it that way, and here's all the reasons why. But God's the one telling you, yes, you can. And I got you. So I love you guys. I pray this message blesses you, that it gave you some perspective. And I appreciate all of you for sharing your time with me and allowing me to share my time with you. Take care.